What's going on, my friends? Welcome to Module 2. This is Nathan Barna. I am the founder of Life Magic and Optimal Evolution and other things as well. I like to create shit and share my love with the world and ultimately help make this world a better place for us all. And so today we are going to be going into Module 2. And Module 2 is about the last diet that you'll ever need, the 5 steps to looking and feeling amazing while eating the foods that you love. So today's going to be all about nutrition and food quality, and we're going to break down the 5 steps. And I want to start with my own little backstory to kind of give this some context. So what really got me into nutrition was obviously when I was an athlete, when I was in high school, I started lifting weights, and at that time I knew absolutely nothing about nutrition. I mean, I was eating, I remember during the summertime, my go-to, I'd go around riding my bike all day. You know, that's what I like to do. And when it was time for lunch, my go-to meal was a whole box of Kraft mac and cheese, and then I would have some kind of lunch meat sandwich with some more cheese on it. And sometimes, if I was feeling really crazy, I would put some pizza rolls in my sandwich. And you know, mind you, we're also eating this on white bread. So as you can see, you know, that's where I started. Most people see the food that I'm eating now and they think that I've just kind of, you know, been eating this way forever. But it's been a long progression over over decade now from that point. And what really got me into it was being an athlete. Obviously, I started to recognize that I just didn't feel the best. And I also recognized that I was trying to gain weight and I was trying to put muscle on, and I was having a really hard time. And the first thing that I started to do was, you know, I just started to get better food quality. So I was looking at all the different things that I was eating, and I still didn't really know much at the time. I didn't know nearly, obviously, as much as I know now. And so when I started, it was just like, let me try to eat foods that I think are healthy. So, you know, instead of chips, I was eating pretzels. You know, instead of mac and cheese, you know, Kraft mac and cheese, I'd maybe eat some pasta. You know, I was eating canned tuna, a bunch of chicken breasts that were, you know, the cheapest that I could find, obviously. And so, as you can see, you know, this went through progressions, and then I started to recognize that, oh, you know, where the food is coming from and the things that it's made out of, that's what's really important. So a lot of times in nutrition, we're taught to look at, you know, the nutrition facts, and we look at the calories, we look at the carbs, we look at the fats, we look at the proteins, and then we base our decisions off of that. But I realized that all of those things are just the byproduct or just the result of the ingredients. And the ingredients was actually in the food, and that's what's actually your body is having to break down. And so I started looking at the ingredients, and I started realizing, like, oh shit, all this stuff that I'm eating, there's all these ingredients that I have no clue what they are. And then obviously it just doesn't seem like this is something natural that has come from the earth and that we have been evolved to eat here. And so when I really started looking at that and paying attention to that, that's when things started to shift for me. But the problem was, you know, one, going and like finding all of these foods from the stores that we were shopping at, because as most people know, you know, if you're shopping at Walmart or you're shopping at your, you know, typical like Martin's or grocery store, then you're going to have a hard time finding these healthier options because they're just not available. And so if you don't go to different locations that have better products, then you're kind of stuck with the same stuff, and you're kind of choosing between the lesser of two evils. And also, just a lot of the information that is out there about nutrition is very misguided, very incomplete, to say the least, because again, a lot of times people are saying like, oh, you just have to eat this many calories, and then you just eat this many fats and proteins and carbs, and that's all you got to worry about. And I started there, and I think a lot of times that can be a good place to start, because it gives you a little bit of structure, and it just gets you to start to pay attention to what you're putting into your body. But ultimately, if you stay stuck there, you're going to be missing the bigger picture, which is what is actually in this food. How is this food made? How is it processed? Where is it coming from? And how is the soil that it's ultimately being grown from? As you know, what ends up, we might have in a package was ultimately, you know, at least some semblance of real food at some point. It's just gone through all of these different processes and all of these, you know, basically manufacturing. And so once I started to realize that and the challenge of that, then I recognized like, oh, I needed to actually start getting more involved in my community and seeing where I could find better resources. And so I started looking at different farms and researching different stores. And ultimately, you know, I had started shopping at Whole Foods. And just because they had the most variety of options that were healthier by comparison than any of the other stores that I found. And also, as much as I could, I was buying from my local farmers. And the second challenge that popped up was, well, shit, this stuff is expensive. You know, it's, you know, people talk about, you know, buying organic foods and buying healthier foods and how it's more expensive. And I'm not going to lie, it is. I spend more money on food now, eating the way that I choose to eat, than I did when I wasn't. But the thing that people don't realize, and that is actually more of a cost long term, is ultimately your health and your health span. Because if you're eating low quality foods, even though yes, you might be paying less money. And another little caveat to that is, a lot of times if people are eating out a lot, and you know, you're having different dinners, and you're wasting a lot of food because you're buying a lot of food that is getting wasted, then, you know, in a sense, you might actually be spending more money. But I get it. You know, I've lived the poor man's diet, so to speak, so I know that how cheap food can be, and even how cheap can food when you are eating healthier. There's different options, and obviously, if you're trying to stay super basic, then you can keep your costs relatively low while still eating whole foods. So it is possible, and I do want to share some of that with you. But overall, yes, you are going to be paying more money for the food. But what if that food is going to help you be healthier? What if that food is going to help you be more productive? What if that food is going to help you feel better, so that you can be more and do more? What if that food is going to help you live longer? What if that food is going to help you stay healthy, so you don't have to go to doctors, you don't have to pay for medical expenses, you don't have to worry about such, you know, getting so much insurance? And so really, when it comes down to it, when you are willing to pay a little bit more upfront, you're actually going to increase the quality of your life, increase your capacity to do the things that you love to do, and ultimately make more money doing the things that you love to do. And so really, it ends up being cheaper in the long run, because it's an investment that begins to pay for itself and begins to pay itself back to you. Whereas if you try to be cheaper up front, and then you start to have health problems, and now your health span decreases, your lifespan might be decreasing, your quality of life is decreasing, your energy, your vitality, your productivity is going to be decreasing. And like, okay, you saved a few bucks, but now you feel like shit and you're tired all the time and things hurt, and now you're having to go to the doctor and you're on these medications. So, you know, what's the cost of that? And that's what you have to ask yourself. And sometimes it'll be a hard conversation to have with yourself, but if you're being honest with yourself, and that's a good place to start, then you're going to realize that eating healthier foods is going to be the better investment long term. And there are actually ways that you can do that relatively inexpensively. I mean, hell, you can start a garden. You can invest in some livestock if you chose to. And even though you might have a little bit bigger investment up front, you get these systems going, then you're able to supply you and your family with food for relatively nothing. You just have to take care of things. You have to tend to things. So, you know, we pay other people to do that stuff for us, but you can take that on for yourself. So there's always an option. If you're creative enough, if you're resourceful enough, there's always an option. All right. So through that challenge, realizing that, I started to eat healthier and I started to feel better. What do you know? And I started to put more muscle on, and my body started to hurt less. I started to perform better. I started to recover faster. I started to heal from all these different, you know, things that seemed unrelated, but I then recognized were products of fungal infection and just my body being out of balance, my gut being out of balance, having a leaky gut, and things were, you know, getting into my system. My body was creating sensitivities to different foods. There's all kinds of things going on, and a lot of times these are happening all the time, but people don't realize it, and because they can seem like all these separate symptoms when really they're can be traced back to the same thing. So food can be medicine, it can heal you, or food can be poison, and it could be taking away from your health and your vitality. And so let's get into the 5 steps. So step 1, I actually got some notes here. Step 1, you are what you eat. And this all has to go into the food quality. And not only you are what you eat, but you are what you ate. And, you know, if you think of like a cycle of life. So ideally, if you've got healthy soil, which, you know, is soil that's been, you know, nurtured, or soil that just honestly just hasn't been depleted through all of our conventional farming practices. If you've got healthy soil, then you're going to be able to produce a healthy plant. And if you've got a healthy plant, animals that eat those plants are going to be healthy. And then us humans, we eat the animals and the plants that come from the healthy soil. And what do you know? We're healthy. It's a cycle of life. And ideally, our waste, just like the animal pees and it poops and it fertilizes the ground, ideally our waste is not a poison back into the earth. It's actually a blessing back into the earth, and the cycle continues. So that's the ideal situation. And now on the other side of that, there's the cycle of death, where you've got unhealthy soil, usually soil that's depleted, overly monocropped, been sprayed with a bunch of pesticides, herbicides, rodenticides, fungicides, sprayed with a bunch of shit, where the soil's depleted now. And essentially from that, you've got a sick and depleted plant. Think about, you know, if you had chronic disease and you were taking a bunch of medications, where it's like, yes, you might be surviving, you might be staying alive, but how healthy are you? You know, you still might be sick. And so you got a sick plant, animals eat those plants, animals get sick. The same thing with them. You got to pump them with antibiotics just to keep them alive, and, you know, there's a whole bunch of factors there. And then if you've got sick animals that are eating sick plants from sick soil, and us humans eat those animals and those plants, then we get sick. And so, and then our excrements, our pee and our poop, is a poison now back into the soil. And so then that's the cycle of death, because then that cycle continues. Not only that, but, you know, healthy people make healthy choices. Unhealthy people make unhealthy choices. So unhealthy people are ultimately making choices with their money, with their actions that are continuing that cycle, continuing to deplete the soil that ultimately is feeding the plants and the animals. And so, on a practical level, when it comes to food quality, really ideally you want to, if you can find organic, that's a good place to start. Not all organic is created equal, but just as a general rule, that is a step in the right direction, because you're more likely to have cleaner and nutritious food. A step above that, I would say, would be to get in touch with your local community. You can go to farmmatch.com is a website that I use that shows you different places where different farmers that are offering their food, and you can find it and research the ones that are doing things aligned with nature, meaning they're not giving a bunch of chemicals, they're not spraying things, it's organic, it's clean food, and that's kind of a word that I prefer, is just clean. And so if you can find that, that's another place. And you're also being local is important too, because food is not just calories. We think of it as this physical thing. It's got calories, carbs, fats, proteins, all these different constituents. But food is energy and information. The food that you eat is literally informing your body. It's informing your cells on what's going on in the environment. So if all the food that you're eating has been imported from across the world, you are getting information from across the world that might not necessarily be helping you in your specific environment. So that's why eating local is important. And also, just the cost of importing, and if you think about all the trucks and the ships and the trains that are exporting the food, importing the food, that also has an effect as well, and that contributes to the pollution. So if you can eat local, and if you can eat organic, clean food, and ideally if you can find regenerative farms and biodynamic farms, then that's going to be the best quality. And that's why I said, going to stores that are more oriented toward health food is going to be a better option, because you're going to have more variety. If you go to Walmart and you're looking for organic foods, you're not going to have that many options, because that's not the demand of that market. So that's why I go shop at Whole Foods. That's why I go to these local farmers and farmers markets that I know are producing clean, healthy food. And you can also, when you go to local places, you can talk to these people. You can ask them questions. You can ask them how they're raising their food. And you can get that information. You can know exactly where your food is coming from. And that's really what it is, just developing a relationship back to the earth, back to where the food is actually coming from. So that's really what it means to have high quality food. And that's really the step one, is getting high quality food and starting to replace. You don't have to do it all at once. Just start to replace the things that you eat the most. If you eat a lot of cereal, the first step is just find a better quality cereal. You don't have to eliminate the cereal, just find a better quality. Look at the ingredients, see if there's anything that you don't understand, or if there's a whole laundry list of stuff, see if you can find an option that has less ingredients, that has more whole foods, that's gone through less processing. And then, as you make the next step, then maybe you can switch out the cereal for some eggs. And as we'll get into, you can start to get more aligned with what your body does best with, as far as its own, I call it the primal pattern type. The proportions of the food that you're eating. So, high fats, proteins relative to carbs, high carbs relative to fats, protein, or somewhere in the middle. So we're going to get into that. But starting to align and starting to pay attention to how these different foods are making you feel is going to be one of the next steps. But yeah, start where you're at. Food is also a habit, and it's a social thing. So it could be easy to be like, oh, I'm going to change everything, but then you go hang out with your friends or your family and they're eating the same stuff, and it's hard not to eat the same stuff. So baby steps, okay? Step 2 which I just alluded to, align to your primal pattern, which essentially, based off of our ancestry, genetically, some people are more predisposed to feeling better and doing better, performing better, eating higher fats and protein, or basically flesh foods, foods with eyes, than carbs or vegetables or no eyes foods. And vice versa, some people are more geared towards eating higher carbs relative to fat and protein. And some people are in the middle. So, just to give you a little background, if your ancestry was more from a polar region, where it was colder and the ground froze over in the winter, these people didn't have access to fruits and vegetables all year long. Kind of, we take it for granted that we can go to the store in the middle of winter and find strawberries, even if we live in a place where there's no strawberries growing anywhere around where we're at because it's frozen. So aligning yourself to that and getting in touch with your ancestry can sometimes help too. And there's a couple questionnaires that you can take to figure out where you might be at in that range, but really it's just paying attention and experimentation. So when you're looking at your meal, see how you feel if you eat, like 2/3 of it fat and protein or meat, and 1/3 of it carbs or vegetables, and see how you feel. And then vice versa, see how you feel eating 2/3 carbs and fats, or vegetables, and 1/3 fat and protein. And then see how you feel doing half and half. And after a little bit of experimentation, and you might already intuitively know, you'll know what you feel best with, and then start aligning all of your meals to that. And then again, pay attention. I'm going to keep coming back to that because you want to develop and reestablish a relationship with your body, because your body's always talking to you. You just got to learn the language. And once you develop that relationship, you can notice more and more what foods make you feel good, what foods make you not feel so good, what proportions of food make you feel good, when you eat and how you feel. You start to notice all these little things, start to keep track. Okay? Number 3, again, these all build on each other. I just alluded to developing a relationship with your body, learning the language of your body. And so every time that you eat something, just pay attention, even while you're eating. Ideally, you should be eating in a quiet place, not in the middle trying to do all these things. But I get it, I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I'll eat and I'll work or I'll drive. But ideally, if you can take some space, create a sacred space around your meal times where you can just be with your meal. You're not doing anything. You're not watching stuff. You're not on your phone. Just be with your meal. If you really want to get healthy, do this. And chew your food all the way. If you want to number at least 25 chews per bite, but chew your food all the way till it's a liquid and it's mushy. And even when you're drinking water, you want to make sure your water, swish it around in your mouth a little bit so it has time to infuse before you enter it all the way into your system. So once you eat, you're paying attention as you're eating. How are you feeling? How are things tasting? And then you're also paying attention after you eat, immediately after, and then a little while after, and then even throughout the day. Because a lot of times we don't recognize that the different signs and the symptoms that we experience, whether it's a headache, whether we feel bloated, whether our breathing rate is off or increased, whether our heart rate feels increased, or we feel hot, sweaty, or our skin itches. There's so many different things that can ultimately be traced back to the foods that you're eating. So pay attention to everything. Does your throat start itching? Does your nose start running? Pay attention to everything. And over time, you'll start to be able to connect. Oh, when I eat this food, I feel this way. When I eat this food, I feel this way. When I eat this proportion of food, I feel this way. And then you can really start to fine-tune things. Okay? So step 4 is a way, it's called the last diet you'll ever need. And it's a way to help you to really fine-tune your diet and give you easy way to know what foods you're eating that make you feel good, what foods you're eating that don't make you feel good, and a way to expand your overall nutrition. Because a lot of times we get stuck on the same foods every single day. which, you know, isn't necessarily bad, but if we have sensitivities to certain foods and we keep eating those foods, it's just compounding the stress on the system. So this is called a 4-day rotation diet. And, you know, I can do a whole thing on this, but just to give you the basic outline, day 1, you eat certain kinds of foods, and then day 2, you won't eat the same foods you had on day 1. Day 3, same thing. You'll eat different foods on day 3, and then you'll eat different foods on day 4. So as a basic example, day 1 you might do beef and carrots. Day 2 you might do eggs and chicken and asparagus. Day 3 you might do some pork and some green beans. Day 4 you might do some salmon and some broccoli. So that's an example, you know, different foods you're eating on different days. So this is something that, you know, we'll continue to build out here, but just as a general framework, see if you can start with 2. So maybe one day you're eating certain foods and another day you're eating another food. So you've got a 2-day, it's called a rotation diet. You got a 2-day rotation diet. And this is based on the fact that when you eat something, it stays in your system for up to 3 days. So that's why it's a 4-day rotation ultimately, because you'll eat the things you eat on day 1, and then they'll have time to completely leave your system before you eat them again. And so it's a really good way to heal your body because you're not overexposing yourself to certain foods. And it's a really good way to increase nutrition because you're eating more variety of foods. And it's a really good way to make sure you're not overexposing yourself to foods that are causing issues and help you identify more easily what foods are causing issues. All right, so that's a 4-day rotation diet, the last diet you'll ever need. And then lastly, 5. And 5 is fine-tuning to freedom. Because when you first start this journey, when I first started this journey, I had to be really strict in the way that I was eating because I was, you know, my body was all out of balance. And it took some discipline at first because, you know, I had to kind of eliminate some of the foods that I loved, and I had to be strict with my nutrition. And I was only eating certain foods that I knew weren't causing issues, which at that time wasn't a whole lot of food. I think I was eating like lamb. I think at one point I was literally just eating meat because anything else would cause issues, but I could just eat high quality meat and maybe some extra oils and butter and fat, and that was it. And then over time, as your body heals, if you're willing to go through the process, if you practice the 4-day rotation, your body will start to heal, and then you'll be able to start to expand your variety again. Because ideally, when you're healthy, if you're truly healthy, you can eat damn near about anything and you'll be okay because your body knows what to do with it. And even if it's something that might not necessarily be the best thing, you'll have the resources, you'll have the vitality to process it and to be okay with it. And obviously you'll also be sensitive enough to know when what foods you're eating aren't making you feel good, and what foods you're eating that are making you feel good. And so that's ultimately the fine-tuning process. You want to start strict. You know, it might take 6 months, it might take a year. I mean, really the healing journey is going to take years. But the more you can just, eat it, for lack of a better term, or pun intended, the more you can just eat it up front and be strict with your diet up front and eliminate the foods that are causing challenges, the sooner you'll be able to heal and the sooner you'll be able to start to expand your diet again to the point where you can eat all of the foods that you love. And that's the thing too. People have ideas about, pizza's bad, burgers are bad, this is bad, this is bad. But it comes down to the ingredients and where those are coming from. You can have a burger that is made with a sourdough, fermented bread, grass-fed beef, raw cheese, organic lettuce, organic tomato. It's a completely different experience for your body than going to McDonald's. Same burger, way different experience. And the same is true with all the other foods. You can eat the foods that you love, and this is why we started Food for Life. Because you can eat the foods that you love, and it's supposed to be delicious. Nutritious is delicious. The problem is that we've overly manufactured foods to be delicious without being nutritious. But nutritious food is supposed to be delicious. And so then you start to have freedom. And that's ultimately the end goal of this. So those are my 5 steps. Just to recap, You are what you eat. You are what you eat. 8, 2, align to your primal pattern. 3, learn the language of your body. 4, the last diet you'll ever need, 4-day rotation diet. And 5, fine-tune your way to freedom. So my homework for you is to start with 1, pick one food that you know that you eat the most of, that you know isn't the best quality, and increase the quality of that food. Start there, and then you can build off of that, build off of success. And one final note on water, we're going to get into this more, but because we're talking about food, I just want to touch on water. The same thing is true for the water. Not all water is created equal. Stay away from tap water. Ideally, you want to find some spring water, good quality spring water, but at the very least get filtered water, and you can put some sea salt in there, and there's a thing called an analemma wand that you can get, and you stir it, and it actually helps to structure your water. Again, I'll take a deeper dive on water in a later module, but just for now, as you're working with your food, just also start to pay attention to water, because water is, it's essentially your body is 99.999% water by molecular count. And so the water that you put in is very, very important, has a lot to do with your energy, with your mental clarity, with the way that your body is able to detoxify and regenerate itself. So you want to have it's high quality water, just like you want to have high quality food. All right, y'all. Thank you for sticking with me, and I hope this was helpful for you, and I hope you go out and implement this, and I look forward to talking to you again very soon. Love you all. Peace.